Why professional speakers fail, part 2. Okay, there's a lot of reasons that really talented, super great people, highly educated people fail in the speaking business. And I'm talking about for 25 years or over 25 years now, I've watched college professors at Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, Yale. I mean, brilliant people, tenured college professors fail miserably in the speaking business. And I've watched radio personalities, television personalities, presidents of corporations just get slaughtered in this business, and they're just confounded when it happens. And it is confusing to a lot of people if you don't really understand this business, but you know, if you've been in it for a long time like I have, it's actually really simple. This is part 2. There are a lot of reasons that people fail, but this is part 2, okay? So you want to avoid this. Part 2 is they don't know how to sell, specifically themselves. Here's the thing. A lot of times people get in this business, like college professors are a perfect example, okay, or senior executives in companies who say basically, look, you know, I've got a PhD in electrical engineering from, you know, Princeton or MIT or some, you know, outrageous place like that, just very tenure, you know, very, successful place, very famous kind of place, and that type of thing. And they'll say, I don't sell myself. I don't have to sell myself, you know. And if you can't sell in the speaking business, you're not going to make it in the speaking business. The only way you would probably even have a chance is if you became a bureau darling, a speaker's bureau darling. In other words, one of the few speakers that a speaker's bureau or multiple speakers bureaus just books over and over and over, and they sell you. Here's the problem with that. If you can't sell yourself as a speaker, you're not going to be able to sell yourself on a stage. And I'll tell you, that's a lot what we do. We sell our ideas, we sell our philosophies, we sell our solutions, we sell our strategies. Of course, we sell ourselves. We're selling all the time on stage. So if you think selling's a bad idea, or you think selling is for, you know, is manipulative, or it's for, you know, people at a lower level or anything like that, you're not going to make it as a speaker. And if you do feel like that for whatever reason, you're going to have to change that belief, and you're going to have to learn how to sell. The good thing is most people can learn how to sell if you're authentic and you're willing to learn and you're coachable. You can learn how to sell. We have, we've mostly, in my career, I've mostly spoken to big corporations. And so Fortune 500 companies, but really companies like Johnson & Johnson and Procter & Gamble and Microsoft and, you know, Caterpillar and Ingersoll Rand, gigantic corporations. I say Fortune 500, but typically they're in the Fortune 20. They're some of the biggest companies. And so those are the hardest contracts, in my opinion, to sell, because you're selling to very senior people. You're typically selling to, you know, a $300,000-$500,000 a year executive who has, who's been in the business 25 years, skeptical, jaded, heard every line of BS, heard every sales pitch, heard everything. I mean, they are tougher than nails. That's how they got there to be where they are. You're not talking to some 25-year-old kid, you know, or 30-year-old kid. It's a tough market, and I had to learn how to sell those people. I learned it from Larry Wilson, the great Larry Wilson, who built the second largest training company in the world. Larry was my mentor for the last 15 years of his life. And he taught me how to sell senior executives, because that's what he did with Wilson Learning, which is, you know, a company that's in 80 countries around the world. You know, it's an amazing company. And so Larry personally took me to sales calls and taught me how to do it, and that's what made my career is in terms of the sales process. And so as a result of that, about maybe 10 years ago, we put a program together called the Corporate Speaker Sales School. Corporate Speaker Sales School. It's a program you can get online. If you go to cboldnetwork.com, you can find the program. It's an audio file, of course, online now. But if you sell senior executives, then you're going to want to take that course or some other course that teaches you how to sell, specifically speaking, training, and consulting contracts to senior executives in large companies. Okay, now maybe you're not speaking to large companies. Maybe you're speaking. You're selling tickets to the public. You still have to learn how to sell. You have to be able to do videos. You do posts like this, you know, social media posts, sales videos, video sales letters. You have to be able to sell if you're going to make it in this business. And so the people typically that get in, that's why college professors are notorious for failing in this business. And I've talked to hundreds of them over the years, backstage when they're speaking for free, and I'm getting, you know, $20,000 for a speech or whatever I was getting at the time, and they really upsets them, because I've literally had them say, I mean, I never counted, but at least 25 times. And we've had them come to the Bill Gove speech workshop and say the same thing to me. Say, Steve, with all due respect, I'm a tenured, professor from Harvard, and I know you went to South Alabama, and no offense, but I think I probably got a little bit better academic record than you. And why are you making millions of dollars a year and I'm making nothing as a speaker? And and I don't really blame them. Maybe they have a point. I always tell them, I said, look, it's not like I'm unfamiliar with Harvard. I went to the gift shop one time, and they didn't kick me out. I bought a hat, and I bought a T-shirt, and I wore it around for like 10 years. Harvard, looked like I went to Harvard. I had a hat, too, and I don't think anyone really believed it, but I gave it a shot. So anyway, but I get where they're coming from. But credibility is very important. Academic credibility is important too. That's all good. It's all great, and they're perfect for the business in some ways. But you have to be able to sell. College professors are not used to selling. They're used to people, kids lining up, and if they don't like what they do in the class, or they speak out in the class, or they don't come with their book or their homework, they kick them out. They're in control. We have to sell our way in. This is a business. We're vendors. We get treated like rock stars, but the reality is we're just vendors. We're like at a convention. We're like the booze, the tablecloths, the water, the coffee, the lights, the stage. All the expenses. We're just one of the expenses at a convention. We just get treated better than anybody else typically because we have that credibility as speakers. But we still have to sell our way in because it turns out when you're making $20,000-$30,000 an hour, everyone wants to do it that has a brain because people that are really smart that have idea solutions for organizations or people in general that are not out there speaking about those solutions, are costing themselves a fortune. I mean, I don't think most people have any idea how much money is involved in this business, but really savvy business people tend to pick it up after a while and go, hey, I think I want some of that action. So we compete with speakers all over the world. I've been in competition for national and international conventions. My last international convention in Europe, the European National Convention for Ingersoll Rand, I was up against speakers from China, Australia, this is what they told me, the United States, Canada, speakers all over the world. And somehow I beat them out that time, but I've lost other times as well. But the bottom line is you got to be able to sell yourself. You have to. So if you're against selling, pick another business because, I don't even know if you should pick any business. Pick a job more than anything else because you got to be able to sell yourself. It's part of it. It's just part of the deal. And again, even if someone's selling you as a speaker, which usually doesn't happen, but even if they do, like if you're working with a speakers bureau, you're going to sell yourself on stage, man. Not everybody believes all our solutions. Not everybody believes all our philosophies. We get up there and we pound it out. And people push back sometimes, and we've got to sell them on our solutions. And that's one of the ways you stay in this business for decades, is that you're able to sell. So learn how to sell. Make sure you understand who your customer is. Larry Wilson told me years ago. He said, "Steve, look, you've got the talent." He says, "If you're trained by Bill Gove, the father of the industry." He says, "You can build yourself into an exciting speaker." When I first got started, he said, "You have the background, the talent to work at the highest level, which is the Fortune 500." He said, "That's the hardest level there is." He said, "So if you can play at the highest level, why not play at the highest level?" He said, and I said, well, that's great. What's the downside? He goes, downside is you've never sold senior executives. And I'd sold before, but not to this level, not to that high level. He says, you're going to have to learn to talk to a very sophisticated buyer that has a BS meter that can go off in 10 seconds and just flush you right out. You're talking to very smart people. And there's a way you sell them. And he taught me how to do it. And it's that, like I said, we put that in that program. But you got to learn who your customer is. Once I learned that, I learned how to sell them. My whole life changed. I mean, it's something that, again, when you put together the whole speaker's package, and that's why I'm talking this series about why speakers fail, because if you can do all these things and avoid all these reasons speakers fail, you can have a life that you can't believe. If you're Tom Brady or you're Madonna, or Beyonce, or someone more modern, I guess I should say, or Kim Kardashian, or Bill Gates, or some famous person, or some Tom Cruise, then speaking probably the money is not all that great for you if you're making $400 million a year, $1 billion a year. But for the rest of us mere mortals, average people, this is the highest paid profession in the world for us. Absolutely. You can make up to $50,000 as a non-celebrity in a speech. And people say, oh, that's not true. Oh, yes, it is true. I've watched it for 25 years. I promise you it's true. But you have to avoid these pitfalls, and one of them is looking down on sales or not being able to sell. The good news is you can change your mindset around selling if that's your mindset, and you can learn to do it because it ain't rocket science. It's a process. It's a process-oriented sale, and the more sophisticated the customer, the more sophisticated the sales process. But again, you're not building rockets. It's still just sales. It's still just a process, and anyone can learn to do it. And as a speaker, to succeed, you got to learn to sell.